I still remember the exact moment I realized I wasn't wanted. I was 7 years old, standing barefoot in our cramped kitchen, watching my mother fuss over my older brother, Jake. He was working on his science project, a volcano model that already had a blue ribbon taped to its side in anticipation of his inevitable win. Mom, I said, holding up my own project, a carefully crafted diorama of the solar system that I'd spent 3 days making. Can you help me with this part? She didn't even look up. Not now, Evan. Can't you see I'm busy with Jake's project? Figure it out yourself. It was such a small moment, unremarkable in the grand scheme of things. But sometimes, the smallest cuts leave the deepest scars. That night, I sat alone on my bed, carefully gluing the last pieces of my project together, the realization settling deep in my bones. The difference between Jake and me wasn't talent or intelligence, it was that he mattered, and I didn't. Growing up in the shadow of a golden child is like being a ghost in your own home. You exist, but you're not really seen. You speak, but your words barely register. I learned to make myself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. The easiest path was invisibility. Jake was everything I wasn't: charismatic, athletic, effortlessly charming. He commanded attention without trying, while I scrambled for scraps of recognition that rarely came. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood, a constant reminder that I was the family disappointment, the afterthought. By high school, I had accepted my role as the scapegoat. When something went wrong, it was my fault. When something went right, it was despite me. My parents attended every one of Jake's soccer games, but they didn't bother coming to my honor ceremony. They threw elaborate parties for his birthdays while mine passed with barely a mention. I tried God how I tried to earn their love. Straight A's, academic competitions, volunteer work, but the goalposts kept moving. Nothing was ever enough. The breaking point came during my senior year when I received my acceptance letter to Stanford, complete with a partial scholarship. Not Yale like Jake, but still something to be proud of. I showed my father the letter, a flicker of hope still alive in me. That, this time, he'd be proud. He barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "Stanford's expensive. We're already stretched thin with Jake's tuition. You should consider community college instead." My chest tightened, my hands trembling. "But I got a scholarship," I said, "and I can work part-time." His expression hardened. "Don't be selfish. Your brother's education comes first. He's going to do something important with his life. Unlike me." The words hung unspoken in the air, but I heard them loud and clear. That night, my mother found me packing my things. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice laced with irritation. "I'm leaving." I was surprised by the steadiness in my voice. She laughed. "And go where?" "Don't be dramatic. I got a job offer from one of my professors. Online tutoring. It won't pay much, but it's enough." "You're being ridiculous," she snapped. "After everything we've done for you?" I turned to face her. "Name one thing." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I watched her struggle for an answer, but she couldn't think of a single thing. "You've ruined this family," she finally said. "Jake's worried about his finals, and here you are, creating drama." Something inside me cracked, or maybe it finally mended. The last thread tethering me to them snapped, and suddenly, I was free. I finished packing, walked out the front door, and never looked back. The night I left home, I had no real plan, just a duffel bag stuffed with clothes, a few $100s saved from tutoring, and a quiet, desperate hope that I'd figure it out. The air outside was cold, biting at my skin as I walked away from the only place I'd ever known. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I took a bus to the city, rented the cheapest apartment I could find, a single room with peeling wallpaper, a broken heater, and a shower that only ran cold. It was miserable, but it was mine. I deferred my Stanford admission. Even with a scholarship, I couldn't afford tuition, and there was no way in hell I was going to beg my parents for help. Instead, I threw myself into work, tutoring online, stocking shelves at a bookstore, waiting tables on weekends. I barely slept. Some nights, I went to bed hungry, but every exhausting, backbreaking day reminded me of one thing: I was finally free. No more fighting for scraps of attention. No more being compared to Jake. No more invisible chains keeping me tethered to a family that never saw me. At first, the silence was the hardest part. No calls, no texts, not even a half-hearted "are you okay?" from my parents. They had erased me as easily as one might delete an old voicemail. But what hurt more was that I wasn't even surprised. I spent my first year on my own, barely surviving. Every dollar was stretched to its limit. Every shift felt like a battle. I made mistakes, plenty of them. I trusted the wrong people, took on too much work, and burned myself out more times than I could count. But I kept going because I had no other choice. Then, slowly, things began to change. The online tutoring gig, which had started as a way to make ends meet, began to take off. At first, it was just a handful of students' kids struggling with math, adults trying to pass their exams. But word spread, and before I knew it, I had a full schedule. Turns out, I was good at it. I knew what it was like to be overlooked, to feel like you weren't good enough. So I taught differently. I made sure my students felt seen, that their questions weren't stupid, that learning didn't have to be terrifying. One student turned into five. Five turned into 20. By the second year, I had saved enough to stop working at the bookstore. By the third, I was making more money than I ever thought possible. But success didn't erase the past. Some nights, I still lay awake thinking about all the things I wanted to say to my parents. How I wanted to show them what I had built, to make them see that I wasn't the failure they thought I'd be. But I knew better. Even if I stood in front of them with proof of my success, they wouldn't care. Because in their eyes, Jake was still the golden child, and I was just the kid who walked away. So I stopped wanting their approval. Instead, I built something for myself. By the fourth year, I launched my own educational platform and online tutoring site that made learning accessible and affordable. I coded it myself, stayed up for nights fixing glitches, and poured everything I had into making it work. And when it finally did, when students started signing up from all over, I felt something I never had before: pride. Not the desperate, reaching for someone's approval kind of pride. Real pride. I had done this on my own, and I didn't need anyone to tell me I was worth something. But then, after years of silence, my past came knocking. 6 years after I walked away, my phone lit up with a name I never thought I'd see again: Mom. At first, I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Then it stopped ringing. And immediately it rang again. 12 missed calls in an hour. Then the text started. "Evan, please call us. It's important. We need to talk. We're in trouble." I set my phone down, my hands shaking. 6 years of nothing, not a single word. And now, suddenly, they needed me? I ignored it, went about my day, sat in meetings, reviewed updates to my platform, had lunch with a potential investor. But no matter what I did, my mind kept circling back to those messages. That night, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't my mom. "Jake," I answered. "What do you want?" My voice was flat, detached. "Evan," he said, his voice strained. "Please. We really need to talk." "About what?" A pause. Then, softly, Dad left. I blinked. "What?" "He ran off with some woman last year. Mom's been struggling ever since. The house is being foreclosed. She can't work because of her arthritis. I had to drop out of medical school. We have nowhere to go." I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. 6 years of silence, broken only by financial desperation. "So you thought of me," I said, my voice sharp. "You're our family," Jake said, as if that explained everything. A bitter laugh escaped me. "Am I? Because for the past 6 years, I haven't heard a damn thing from any of you." "We were hurt," he said quietly. "You just left." I gritted my teeth. I told Mom I was leaving. You know what she did? Laughed. Said I was being dramatic. Silence. "We saw your company in the news," Jake admitted after a moment. "Mom recognized your picture. You've done really well for yourself." And there it was. The real reason they had reached out. Not because they missed me. Not because they regretted how they treated me. But because they needed something. "What do you want, Jake?" Another pause. Then, hesitant, "A place to stay. Just until we get back on our feet. Maybe a loan so Mom can get back on track." The audacity of it stole my breath. 6 years of nothing. And now they expected me to welcome them with open arms? That night, I barely slept. I paced my apartment, arguing with myself. Yes, they had treated me like I didn't matter. Yes, they had abandoned me the moment I walked away. But they were still my family. Maybe this was a chance to fix things. Maybe their desperation would make them see me differently, finally acknowledge what I had accomplished. Maybe this was my opportunity to heal old wounds. But deep down, I knew the truth. People don't change not unless they want to. And my family? They didn't want to. They just wanted me to save them. The next morning, I called Jake back. No, I said simply. What? I won't be giving you a place to stay, or money, or anything else. But we're family, he said, his voice desperate. No, I corrected. Family doesn't ignore you for 6 years and only reach out when they need something. I heard his breath hitch. Please, I'm sorry you're struggling, I said, meaning it. But I can't help you. And for the first time in my life, I truly felt free. The morning after I told Jake no, I expected to feel guilty. I waited for the nagging doubt, the second guessing, the old instinct to apologize for things that weren't my fault. But it never came. Instead, I felt something else. Relief. For once, I hadn't let them pull me back into their orbit. I hadn't caved to the weight of their expectations. I had drawn a line and stood by it, but my family wasn't done with me yet. They showed up at my office the next afternoon. I had just finished a meeting when my assistant knocked hesitantly. Evan, there are two people here to see you, they said, their family. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. What are their names? She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. Your mother and Jake? Of course. I exhaled slowly, considering my options. I could have my assistant send them away. I could avoid this confrontation altogether. But some part of me, maybe the part that still wanted closure, wanted to see them. It's fine, I said. Send them to the conference room. A few minutes later, they sat across from me at the long glass table, their eyes darting around, taking in the sleek office space, the city skyline behind me, the subtle proof of my success. Mom looked older. Jake looked tired, but neither of them looked remorseful. You look well, my mother said cautiously. I am well. A long silence followed. I didn't try to fill it. Jake cleared his throat. We wanted to see you in person. To explain. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Go ahead. Mom sighed, wringing her hands. Evan, we know we weren't the best parents. Things were complicated. Your father, This isn't about Dad, I cut in. This is about you. You both made choices. I just want to know why now? Why reach out after 6 years of silence? Jake shifted uncomfortably. Because we need help. There it was. No sugarcoating, no pretense, just the truth. I nodded slowly. And what exactly do you want from me? A place to stay, Mom admitted. Just until we figure things out. And maybe some financial help to get back on our feet. I studied them carefully. So, let me get this straight. When I left, you never called, never checked in, never even sent a birthday card. But now that you're struggling, I'm suddenly family again? Mom's face paled. That's not fair. No? I tilted my head. Tell me when's my birthday? Her mouth opened, then closed. She glanced at Jake, who wouldn't meet my eyes. I gave a humorless chuckle. You don't even know. Jake finally looked up. Evan, please. We're not perfect, but we're still your family. I stared at them, really looking at them. And for the first time, I wasn't the abandoned son or the neglected brother. I was a man who had built something out of nothing. A man who had fought for his place in the world without them. And I didn't owe them anything. No, I said quietly. I can't help you. Mom's expression hardened. So that's it? You're just going to turn your back on us? I held her gaze. I'm not turning my back on you. You turned your back on me years ago. I just finally realized I don't have to chase after people who never cared. She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Jake exhaled sharply. I guess we shouldn't have come. I shrugged. Probably not. They left without another word. And just like that, the last threads binding me to them unraveled. I should have felt triumphant, victorious. But as I sat in my silent office, staring at the city below, all I felt was nothing. Because in the end, there was no dramatic showdown, no cathartic moment of recognition from them, just an ending. And sometimes, Endings are quieter than we expect. After they left, I thought that would be the end of it. I had drawn my boundary, told them no, and watched them walk out of my life for the second time. I expected silence to follow, the same way it had when I left 6 years ago. But I had underestimated desperation. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. Then another. And another. By the end of the week, my voicemail was full. Some messages were pleading, others angry. The ones from Jake were practical. Just hear us out, Evan. We don't need much. Moms were more manipulative. I can't believe you'd do this to your own mother. Do you know how much we sacrificed for you? I deleted every single one. Then the emails started. At first, they were just variations of the voicemails, long-winded explanations of why they deserved my help. But when I didn't respond, they took a different tone. I don't know what kind of person you've turned into, but the Evan I raised would never abandon his family. I hope you can live with yourself knowing your own mother is struggling to afford food. Jake had to sell Dad's watch just to cover rent this month. Is that what you wanted? Each message was a trap, a carefully crafted guilt trip designed to pull me back in. But I didn't take the bait. Instead, I blocked their numbers. I changed my email, and I moved on. Or at least, I tried to. The thing about cutting off toxic people is that it's never just one clean break. It's 1,000 little moments of doubt, a lingering sense of obligation that whispers maybe you're being too harsh. Maybe they really have changed. Maybe this time will be different. But I knew better. I reminded myself that their version of love had always come with conditions, that the only reason they wanted me now was because they needed something. That if the roles were reversed, if I had been the one struggling, they wouldn't have lifted a finger to help me. So I kept going. Business was thriving. My online platform had expanded into multiple countries. Investors were reaching out. I had employees now, real, capable people who relied on me to lead them. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was building something that mattered. But success didn't shield me from the past. One afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Evan, it's Lisa. Can we meet for coffee? I hadn't seen my cousin in years. Growing up, she had been one of the only people in my family who treated me like I mattered. She never made me feel like a burden, never looked at me the way my parents did with disappointment or indifference. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe, and for a moment, it felt normal. Like the years between us hadn't stretched so thin. Then she sighed. I won't waste your time. I know you've cut them off, but Evan, they're really struggling. I clenched my jaw. I know. Mom told me about the foreclosure, she said. About your mom's health. I stared at my coffee, waiting for the part where she asked me to help. Look, she said gently. I'm not here to pressure you. I just thought you should know. No one else in the family is stepping up, I scoffed. Of course not. Because why would they? My family had never been close, at least. Not in a way that mattered. They took care of Jake because he was the one they had always invested in. But now that their golden child had fallen, everyone was conveniently looking the other way. Lisa hesitated. They've said some things about you. I finally looked up. Let me guess. I'm selfish, ungrateful, cold. She gave me a sad smile. You know how they are. I did. And for the first time, I didn't care. I get it, Lisa, I said. But I'm not responsible for fixing them. She nodded, and to her credit, she didn't try to argue. I just wanted to see where your head was. I took a deep breath. My head is exactly where it needs to be. And for the first time in my life, that was the truth. After meeting Lisa, I expected the guilt to creep in. I braced myself for the doubt, the old reflex to fix things, to prove I wasn't the cold, selfish person my family painted me to be. But it never came. Instead, there was only clarity. For years, I had begged for scraps of love and recognition. I had spent my childhood twisting myself into something more acceptable, more likable, more worthy. But the truth had always been the same. I was only valuable to them when I was useful. I wasn't useful anymore. I thought my refusal to help would be the end of it, that my mother and Jake would eventually accept my decision and move on. I was wrong. A week after meeting Lisa, my assistant walked into my office looking uneasy. Evan, there's someone here to see you. I barely looked up from my laptop. I don't take walk-ins. I know. She hesitated. But It's your mother. I froze. Of course she had come here. Calling didn't work. The emails didn't work. Sending Lisa didn't work. So now she was showing up at my workplace, where she knew I couldn't ignore her. I exhaled slowly, weighing my options. I could have her removed. Security wouldn't hesitate. But I wasn't interested in making a scene. So I stood, straightened my suit, and walked out to the lobby. She was sitting in one of the waiting chairs, hands clenched in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered, but the exhaustion in her eyes wasn't unfamiliar. She had always carried stress like it was part of her body, woven into her skin. When she saw me, she forced a smile. "Evan, Mom." My voice was flat. She stood, as if expecting me to hug her. I didn't. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then she sighed. "I know you're busy, but I was hoping we could talk." I gestured toward a small private seating area off to the side, where employees sometimes took breaks. It was out of the way, away from curious eyes. She sat down across from me, looking around. "You've built something incredible." I didn't respond. I wasn't here for small talk. She swallowed hard. "Jake and I are barely holding on. The apartment we're in, it's not safe. The landlord is threatening eviction. And my health." She broke off, shaking her head. "We don't have anywhere else to go." I studied her carefully. "You still have other family. Have you asked them?" Her lips pressed together. They have their own problems." "Ah." I leaned back. "So I'm the last resort." She flinched. "It's not like that, isn't it?" I tilted my head. "You haven't spoken to me in 6 years. You ignored every achievement, every milestone, every single moment of my life that didn't revolve around Jake. And now, because you need something, suddenly I'm your son again?" Her expression crumbled. "Evan, please. I know we weren't perfect parents, but we're still family." I let out a slow breath, keeping my emotions in check. "You always use that word like it means something." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know what else to say to make you understand." I stared at her for a long time, considering my next words carefully. Then I leaned forward. "I do understand. I understand that the only reason you're here is because you have nowhere else to turn. I understand that if I were the one struggling, you wouldn't have lifted a finger to help me. And I understand that when I walked away 6 years ago, you didn't try to stop me." Her lower lip trembled. "I was hurt. You leaving like that, I told you I was leaving." My voice sharpened. "You laughed in my face." Silence stretched between us. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I sighed, suddenly exhausted. "I'm not giving you money." Her breath hitched. "Evan, I mean it." My voice was firm. "I hope you figure things out. I really do. But I'm done paying the price for your choices." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "We're going to lose everything." I swallowed down the lump in my throat. "I already lost everything," I said quietly. "The difference is, I rebuilt myself from nothing. And you're still waiting for someone to save you." For a moment, she just stared at me, as if searching for the son she thought she could manipulate. But I wasn't him anymore. Finally, she stood, wiped her eyes. "You've changed," she murmured. I met her gaze, unwavering. I had to. Without another word, she turned and walked out of my office. This time, I didn't watch her go. This time, I didn't feel empty. This time, I felt free. After my mother left my office, I sat there for a long time, staring at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For years, I had imagined this moment, the day my family would finally see me. Not as an afterthought, not as Jake's overshadowed little brother, but as someone who mattered, as someone worthy. And now that the moment had come, I realized something. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like justice. It just felt done. There was no satisfaction in watching my mother walk away. No rush of triumph in saying no to her face. All I felt was the quiet weight of closure settling over me. They weren't coming back. Not this time. And for the first time, that wasn't a painful thought. It was just reality. The calls stopped after that. No more emails. No more surprise visits. For weeks, I kept waiting for something, some last-ditch effort to guilt me back into their lives. But silence was all that followed, and I embraced it. The days stretched into months, and little by little, I let go of the anger I had carried for so long. Not for them, for me. Because I didn't want to live my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next wound to reopen. I had spent too much time letting my past dictate my future, and I was done. I poured everything into my work. The company expanded, hiring more tutors, reaching more students. My name was being mentioned in articles, my platform being recognized as one of the fastest growing educational services in the country. But success didn't feel empty anymore, because this time I wasn't chasing approval. I was just living. One evening, months after the final conversation with my mother, I was locking up my office when my phone buzzed. A message. Not from Jake. Not from my mother. From Lisa. Hey, I know it's been a while. Would love to catch up if you're up for it. No pressure? I stared at the screen, debating. Lisa had never pushed me. She had never tried to convince me to go back to them. She had only ever given me information and let me decide what to do with it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the kind of family I could have. So I typed out a response. Yeah, I'd like that. Healing isn't a straight path. Some days, I still felt the old wounds ache, the childhood loneliness, the years of being unseen. Some nights, I still dreamed of sitting at the kitchen table, watching my mother beam at Jake while I sat quietly in the background. But the difference was, I no longer lived in that place. I had built something new, something strong, something mine, and I wasn't looking back. Story 2. I was treated like a wallet by my wife's family. A true man takes care of things without complaining. As they insisted that I cover the cost of their vacation, her sister sneered. I grinned before cutting them off entirely. They were in a panic a week later. My inbox was overflowing with 30 unseen emails pleading for assistance. I never imagined that I would be blogging here, but I need to vent after the terrible family meal today. I was just considering my sister-in-law. My fury boils when I see Michaela's arrogant face. For some background, I am 35M and have been married for 6 years to Diana, 32F. We're doing all okay. Comfortable, but by no means wealthy. I started off with simply a beat-up pickup and worked my tail off to create my modest construction firm. We reside in a modest home and Diana works as a teacher. The issue? Her family, in particular, her 36-year-old elder sister Michaela, who has been treating me like her own ATM since the beginning. She first required a few $100s for minor problems and made pledges to repay the money. That didn't happen. I ignored it in order to maintain harmony. That's simply the way Michaela is, Diana would always remark, or family supports family. However, this evening was unique. We were all at the weekly family dinner hosted by Diana's parents. Diana, me, Michaela, and her silent husband Carl, Lila, their youngest sister, and their mother, Violet. Michaela talked endlessly about this incredible trip package. She discovered a family vacation at a beach resort for 2 weeks, when she turned to face me with her phony grin and said, "So, Miles, when can you transfer the money the deposit's due next week?" I wasn't really listening. My drink almost suffocated me. How much money? Foolish for the trip. I got this fantastic bargain. Just $800 and $2,000 for each pair. You think that's nothing? You brag about how nicely your business is going all the time. The foolishness of this. I surveyed the table. Everyone was looking eagerly at me, as if this were the usual. Diana's dish immediately piqued her curiosity. This trip wasn't discussed with me. I'm not paying for it, I responded firmly. The room's temperature plummeted by around 20 degrees. A strange mixture of astonishment and rage distorted Michaela's face. You're not paying, what do you mean? The children have already been taught that they cannot turn back now. She looked across at Diana. Advise your hubby to cease being challenging. At last, Diana spoke, although in a feeble voice. Perhaps we ought to talk about this later. My mother-in-law, Violet, then added her voice. You understand how much the family needs this vacation, Miles, my love. Lately, everyone has been really anxious. I interrupted her. No, I'm not covering everyone's trip expenses. That's crazy. With her chair scuffing the floor, Michaela got to her feet. A true man takes care of things without complaining. Carl is always willing to aid family. Who earns half as much as me, Carl? Only gazed at his dish. I lost it at that point. I want to make things very clear. Your bank is not me. For the last 6 years, I have documented all emergency loans. Michaela, you owe me more than $22,000. Not even a dime was paid back. The room blew up. Michaela began to yell. Why should I keep track? Family doesn't do that, Violet sobbed, as she described how I was destroying the family. Lila was frantically updating the group chat on the crisis in the extended family. I took out my phone, launched the Notes app, and began reading aloud. $3,000 for Carl's medical emergency in March 2022. It's funny since he shared photos from Atlantic City that weekend, and $5,000 was needed for urgent home repairs in December 2022. But that month, you purchased a hot tub? Shall I go on? Those were not the same. Michaela let out a cry. It is expected of you to assist your family. What sort of man maintains such a score? My chair slammed against the wall as I got up. The kind that has finished being utilized. Do you wish to take a vacation? Cover the cost yourself. Actually, you have 90 days to begin repaying me, or I'll take it to court for small claims. All of my transfers are recorded. At last, Diana was able to speak up. Please, Miles. However, I was finished. We're heading out immediately. There was tension on the journey home. Before we arrived at our driveway, Diana was silent. She said, "They're going to make this terrible. They've done so already." As I turned off the engine, I answered, "However, I've had enough of their game. The family has been bombarding my phone with texts. It seems like I'm cold-hearted, nasty, and undermining familial ties." Michaela received around 40 supportive comments on her ambiguous Facebook status about phonies revealing their true selves. Diana is conflicted. She keeps repeating that's simply the way things are, even though she knows I'm correct. And perhaps we could be of some assistance. However, I'm no longer standing my ground. I've muted the family group chat and blacklisted Michaela's number. I'm going to call my accountant tomorrow to arrange all of the loan paperwork. Allow them to weep and yell. I've had enough of playing the family ATM. Am I being too severe? 6 years of this is enough, even if I feel like I should have handled it more tactfully. Edit. I appreciate all of the quotes you provided. When I have more to offer, I'll update. I have several calls to return right now, and I need to start recording everything. Becky tries to manipulate my source of income. Go for it. Update. I appreciate all of the comments on my last post. Since then, a lot has transpired, and to be honest, I'm still figuring everything out. A brief summary. My sister-in-law, Michaela, pitched a tantrum about how real men provide for her when I declined to pay for her family's vacation plans, which oddly only included her immediate family. Things have grown much worse. Diana came out yesterday morning, looking concerned, as I was enjoying coffee on our back patio and browsing through my phone. She displayed her screen to me. I was not included in the secret family group chat that Michaela had set up, and she was fabricating a story about how I was mistreating Diana financially by keeping all the money. In the endless images, Michaela portrayed in dramatic terms how Diana is unable to purchase coffee without requesting permission. Pure BS. We offer both shared and individual accounts. At first, I dismissed it with a joke, but Diana continued to browse. My wife's entire extended family had been persuaded by Michaela that I was this domineering monster. He sent a link to an article about the warning indicators of financial abuse. Comments like I always knew something was off about him and "You need to protect yourself, Diana," were common in the chat room. When Carl lost his job, Michaela brought up the fact that I had previously assisted her with her rent. That was the true stinger. She had to beg for days, according to her version, and I forced her to grovel before I could help her with reality. Without doubt, I sent the money within an hour of her. Something suddenly clicked. Over the years, there have been numerous emergency requests, bills, and all those emotional phone calls. Diana was enraged. She called Michaela right away, put her on the speaker. Large. Michaela began yelling about my transformation. She was turned against her own family by Diana. Michaela actually said, "Oh, honey, you really believe you have control over that money?" When Diana brought up our separate accounts. "He most likely keeps an eye on every penny." My mother-in-law, Violet, could be heard in the background at that point. "We're just concerned about you, Diana." Do you recall his refusal to assist Michaela with her vacation? What sort of a man treats his family that way? I saw my wife's expression change. She hung up the phone in the middle of her tirade and sat there for a minute. Her banking app was then launched, and she took screenshots of her transactions. coffee shops, sporadic Target runs, and internet shopping, all without my consent. In the family chat, she shared them. What did Michaela say? Clearly, he is forcing you to do this. Tonight, we have a family meeting. No justifications. We went. My choice. I knew better than to ignore it, but Diana wanted to. Don't let anyone else dictate the story. Violet's home was the location of the meeting. I sensed the tension as soon as we entered. Carl refused to look at me. Lila, the youngest sister, was nervously picking out her nails. Violet had that look. You know the one. Like she was ready to play the concerned mother role. Michaela started in immediately. Finally ready to explain yourself, Miles. How you're treating my sister. I stayed calm. Pulled out my phone. Actually, yes. Let's talk about treatment. Let's talk about the $2,300 you borrowed for Carl's truck repair. I turned to Carl. Except there was no truck repair, was there, Carl? The room got quiet. Carl looked confused. What? Truck repair. That's when it all started unraveling. Turns out Michaela had been playing both sides, telling me they needed money for emergencies while telling Carl she'd won it playing online slots or gotten bonuses at work. The vacation fund she'd been telling everyone I'd already agreed to pay for it months ago. The screaming started again, Michaela calling me a liar. Violet trying to calm everyone down while simultaneously telling Diana, "This isn't how we raised you." Lila crying. Carl just sitting there looking shocked as more lies came to light. I stayed seated, calm. Let them yell. Every accusation just proved my point. Diana stood by me literally and figuratively, adding up the emergency loans on her phone. $15,400 over 3 years, all while they lived above their means. Posted beach trips on Instagram, bought designer bags. Finally, when Michaela screamed, "You're dead to this family!" I stood up, looked her right in the eyes. You're right about one thing. I am dead to this family. And so is my wallet. We left. Diana hasn't stopped apologizing, but I keep telling her she's not responsible for her family's actions. She's blocked everyone except Lila, who sent a private message saying she had no idea about the loans and manipulation. The finest aspect? This morning, I got a text from Carl asking to talk man to man. Apparently, he's found some interesting credit card statements. I haven't responded yet, but I'm done playing nice. They wanted to paint me as the bad guy. All right, let's see how they handle it when I actually become one. Next moves are already planned. No more. Mr. Nice Guy update. Just got a string of panic texts from Michaela about how we're family. Can't we talk about this? Too late. Way too late. Told her sister-in-law tried to turn the family against me with lies about financial abuse. It backfired when her own lies about loans and money came to light. Now I'm done playing nice. Update 2. If you haven't read my previous posts, check my profile. Told her my in-laws, led by Sil Michaela, treated me like their personal ATM for years. When I refused to fund their luxury vacation, they tried turning my wife, Diana, against me. Now they're learning what happens when you push too far. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and holy shit, what a roller coaster! Remember how I mentioned I had a plan? Well, it's time to share what went down. First thing Monday morning, I sent emails to everyone who owed me money. Simple, professional. As discussed, this is a formal request for repayment of loans totaling amount. Please arrange payment within 30 days. Attached were screenshots of their texts begging for money, my transfers, and their promises to pay back. Yeah, I kept receipts. Always keep receipts. Michaela was first to call screaming about how I was attacking family. I let her rant on speaker while Diana listened. How dare you demand money from us? We're family. Carl just got that new gaming setup. We can't afford this right now. That's a $3,000 problem you created, I replied calmly. You borrowed that money for your emergency roof repair 6 months ago. Funny how you had money for Carl's toys, but not to repay us. She hung up. 10 minutes later, mother-in-law Violet called Diana crying about how I was tearing the family apart. Diana finally snapped. Mom, you're tearing this family apart by enabling Michaela's entitled behavior. Then came the group chat explosion. Layla, the youngest sister, started posting old screenshots of Michaela bragging about her shopping sprees right after claiming she couldn't pay bills. Carl's gaming setup bought the same week. Michaela told us they couldn't afford their car payment. The emergency dental work money went to her Botox, each receipt. I'd gathered hit like a bomb. The family WhatsApp became a war zone. Years of resentment surfaced as relatives realized how much Michaela had borrowed from everyone. Cousin Emma revealed Michaela had guilted her into paying for half their shared vacation rental, which Michaela then claimed full credit for gifting to their parents. Michaela showed up at our house unannounced, mascara running, screaming about how I was destroying her reputation. Diana calmly pointed to our ring camera and said, "You're doing that yourself right now." Michaela tried to force her way in a bad move. I called the non-emergency police line while Diana recorded everything. The responding officer was polite but firm. "Try this again. Get trespassed." The real karma. Michaela's employer follows her on Instagram. All those sick days she took, she posted herself shopping or at the spa every single time. Someone, not me, apparently sent screenshots to HR. She's on final warning now. Carl finally grew a spine after discovering Michaela maxed out their shared credit card on designer bags. He called me privately, voice shaking. "Man, I should have listened when you warned me years ago. How do I protect myself?" I gave him my financial advisor's number. He's staying with his brother now, figuring out next steps. Violet's still enabling Michaela, but the extended family's done. No more loans, no more guilt trips. Uncle Jim announced the next family reunion won't be at Michaela's house, which she volunteered everyone else to fund, but at his lake cabin instead. Those who can pitch in, great. Those who can't just bring a dish to share. The finest aspect? Diana has never been more certain about us. Last night, she looked at me and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't see it sooner, but I'm so proud you stood up to them." We stood up to them. Then she showed me texts from her high school friends about how Michaela had borrowed money from them too, claiming Diana was in on it. She used my relationships to scam people. Never again. Michaela sent 30-plus emails ranging from rage to begging. The last one just said, "I know you're reading these. You've wrecked everything." Actually, she damaged everything herself. I just quit hiding the evidence. Some family members are pissed that I went nuclear, but others? They're thanking me for finally exposing the rot. Diana's relative even sent us a gift card with a letter for having the bravery. We didn't. The trip they asked I pay for canceled instead. Diana and I are taking her. Elderly aren't the only one who warned us about Michaela years ago on a weekend vacation. She's always wanted but could never afford since she was too busy supporting family. Karma's not a bitch. She's simply incredibly brilliant at bookkeeping. No legal drama needed, no elaborate machinations, simply the consequences of their own choices. Finally, catching up. Sometimes the best retribution is simply standing back and letting them confront the world they created. Final update first. Thank you all for the incredible support. Your remarks helped me keep focused when things became tough. If you haven't read my earlier blogs, the short version is my in-laws lead by my sill. Michaela used me like their personal ATM for years, until I refused to support their luxurious vacation. By claiming that a true man gives without complaining, they attempted to turn my wife Diana against me. I cut them off entirely 2 months ago, and holy shit, the consequences have been both cruel and pleasurable. This is the update that you all requested. Do you recall Michaela's constant boasting on Instagram about their ideal life? That facade quickly fell apart. At 11 p.m. last week, Diana received a frantic phone from her. Their power had been turned off. As it turned out, they had been living paycheck to paycheck and relied on my loans to keep up their standard of living. They sought the vacation fund. To make up for 3 months of overdue mortgage payments, they need it. Last Sunday, over a family meal, the actual bomb went off. Diana demanded that we depart. Everyone vowed to apologize when they saw Violet at the supper. Yes, exactly. As soon as we entered, Michaela began her typical manipulation. "Please, Miles. We are related." In addition to Lila's upcoming wedding, Carl lost his overtime at work. I just took out my phone, opened my notes and app, and began reading aloud. All of the loans they had taken out from me throughout the previous 5 years. Dates. Quantities. They have a total of $43,000 in excuses. The room fell quiet. After being silent for years, Carl finally lost his temper. At Michaela, not at me. It was only $5,000, you claimed. Miles was being theatrical, you told me. He was trembling and red-faced. As it turned out, she had been concealing how much they really borrowed from him. Things became nasty at that point. Violet made an effort to be a peacekeeper. This is something that our family can resolve. I wasn't finished, though. I produced more receipts and screenshots of Michaela's text message to Diana, accusing me of being weak and claiming that, unlike Carl, I wasn't a true provider. I nearly felt sorry for his face when he read those. Nearly. The yelling began. Carl bounded out. Lila sobbed about the breakdown of her wedding arrangements. Violet attempted to guilt-trip Diana. How can you allow him to do this to our family? Diana's answer. Showing everyone how Michaela had taken out a $2,000 loan from her teacher's retirement fund last year and never paid it back, she launched her banking app. Michaela lost it at that point. She began yelling that I was abusive and dominating, and that I had poisoned Diana against her family. A huge error. In the dining room, Diana picked up her phone, launched Facebook, and began a live video. She said, "Tell everyone how abusive Miles is. Explain to them how he covered Mom's auto repairs. Both Lila's college texts and your children's summer camp. Tell them how you labeled him weak behind his back while he put in extra effort to lend you money." Michaela sobbed as she ran upstairs. Violet trailed along, yelling that I had damaged her kid. Excellent. Allow them to experience what it's like to be surrounded and controlled. The fallout. Carl remains with his brother. When he eventually looked at their credit card accounts, he saw that Michaela had used all three of them. Lila's expensive wedding site had to be canceled. As it happens, Michaela had pledged to use the money she anticipated receiving from me to help cover the cost. She genuinely apologized to me directly and is now organizing a garden wedding in its place. The finest aspect? When Violet attempted to call Diana at work to guilt-trip her once more, Diana finally snapped. Diana merely stated, "We're done until you all accept responsibility and repay what you owe." She banned their numbers after that. Now they're rushing. Poshmark is where Michaela sells her high-end purses. I've destroyed the family. Violet is telling everyone who will listen. This is what actually kills them, though. Lila's smaller wedding is something I'm assisting with. Not with cash. She did not request it. I'm putting her in touch with neighborhood sellers and letting her transport decorations in my vehicle. I am aware. She is the only one who has acknowledged her errors and is making an effort to improve. Diana praised me for my hard stance last night. She said that while I was too afraid to acknowledge it, I always knew they were taking advantage of us. You didn't just confront them. I learned how to do it from you as well. To everyone who advised me to keep my cool and keep a record of everything, I appreciate everyone who pointed out that I was being too severe. It is not retaliation to watch them suffer the repercussions of their deeds. It's the truth. Story 3. I never imagined that at 45, I would be in this situation. Gazing around my large home in the most affluent area of the city, I should have been totally satisfied. I had created everything from the ground up, after all. A gorgeous flat downtown, a successful chain of spas that had become the buzz of town, and this home that most people could only imagine. However, something was lacking. Despite all of my accomplishments, there was a need that no amount of financial success could satisfy. My name is Jenna Mitchell. There was always stillness when I got home each evening. The mansion seemed too large and too silent. Many times, my friends, the majority of them were contentedly married and had kids tried to introduce me to people, but nothing ever worked out. You can't continue to work 60 hours a week, Jenna. There is more to life than business meetings and profit margins, according to my closest friend, Sarah. I was aware of her correctness. However, I had been so consumed with growing my spa business that I had lost sight of how to put my personal life first. I was both the proprietor and the esthetician of a tiny salon in a strip mall when it all began. Genuine willpower and innumerable restless nights. I grew to 3, then 5, and now 8 prosperous spas around the city. Every time the subject of my personal life came up, I would argue that I was happy. But was I? In actuality, I had witnessed moms and daughters visiting my spa together, laughing and savoring special moments, and it would hurt me within. I was sitting in my home office one evening going over quarterly reports. It buzzed on my phone. Once more, it was Sarah. Jen, never again tell me that you're working late. Before I could even say hi, she said, I'm just completing some papers. I answered, being aware of the direction this discussion was taking. Stop whatever you're doing then. You're coming to Lisa's place this Saturday for a dinner party. This time, no excuses. Sarah would not listen to my protests. I would like you to meet someone. She continued in a tone that suggested she was planning something. Don't tell me this is just another setup, Sarah. I let out a moan. Jen, believe me on this one. He is unique. He has a teenage daughter, is divorced, and is prosperous. He is genuine, not like the workaholics I've previously presented to you. I paused at something in her voice. Perhaps it was time to risk something. All right, I sighed. However, I will no longer allow you to act as a matchmaker. The dinner gathering was just as you may have imagined. Better wine, better food, and the easy banter that old friends have. I saw him at that point. It was not his physical appearance that made David Anderson stand out in the throng, but rather his demeanor. I saw that he exuded a certain calm assurance. Before I knew it, hours had gone by when we relocated to a more peaceful area of the room. David was a corporate attorney who had gone through 3 years of divorce. On alternating weeks, his 15-year-old daughter Emma resided with him and her mother. Having a teenager as a co-parent must be difficult. Sipping my wine, I replied. David laughed. Emma is a lovely child, but teens can be a pain in the ass. They might be your closest buddy one moment and then roll their eyes at everything you say the next. We found that hiking, old films, and bad dad jokes were things we had in common. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, it seemed effortless and natural. I didn't think twice. We went to a little Italian restaurant downtown for our first date. As at the party, the talk flowed naturally. Describe Emma to me. Sincerely interested in his daughter, I said. His expression brightened. She is really intelligent, actually, into photography and the arts. She is going through the normal adolescent stage of believing she is an expert on everything. Despite everything, she has a kind heart. We began going out on a regular basis. Peaceful dinners at home for the first time in years, movie evenings, and weekend walks. I saw that my thoughts were diverting from my task. After a couple months of dating, the subject of meeting Emma naturally came up. As we strolled across the park one evening, David remarked, I think she'd like you. She has inquired about you. I experienced a twinge of anxiety. Jenna, are you certain it's not too soon? 4 months have passed since we started dating. I believe the moment has come. The next weekend was set aside for the gathering. Emma would arrive first at one of my spas. After that, we would all gather together for supper. I worked for hours to ensure that everything would be flawless. I recognized David in Emma's looks as soon as she entered the spa. The same easy grin, the same kind brown eyes. She first came across as reserved, but she started to open up when I gave her a tour of the spa and introduced her to the staff. Glancing around the treatment area, she remarked, This is so cool. You're on all 8 of these places now, Dad remarked. I answered, attempting to avoid coming across as boastful. If I attempted some of the therapies, would that be acceptable? With hesitation, she asked. I gave her a VIP membership card while grinning. Think of this as a welcoming present. Her eyes brightened, and I briefly had a glimpse of the youngster hiding behind the adolescent facade. Really? Thank you. Emma was unable to stop chatting about her spa treatment throughout dinner that night. Something changed inside of me as David smiled at me across the table. This might, just might, work. Our bond became stronger as the months went by. Emma appeared to truly enjoy spending time with me, and David and I settled into a comfortable rhythm. She would frequently visit my spa with her friends, and we would engage in lengthy discussions about schoolboys and her future goals. About a year into our romance, David and I were eating supper at my place one evening when he abruptly started acting serious. Jen, he remarked as he reached for my hand across the table. It has been an incredible year. You made our lives and mine so much more joyful. I want to be with you for the rest of my life because I love you. Are you going to wed me? He produced a modest yet tasteful ring. Similar to our partnership, as I nodded, tears filled my eyes. Indeed, definitely. We chose to have a small ceremony at City Hall with only our intimate family members in attendance. Emma's response when we informed her wasn't exactly what I had anticipated. However, why are we unable to have a large wedding? She objected. Being a bridesmaid was my dream. At school, everyone discusses their parents' weddings. I drew her into my embrace. You have your entire life ahead of you, my dear. You have complete control over the size and beauty of your wedding. David and Emma moved into my home following the wedding. Emma had the greatest room in the house redecorated, and I let her choose out the furniture and paint colors. For a time, everything seemed ideal, and she appeared to be ecstatic with her new area. Together, we took trips, dined at new places, and watched films in comfortable nights. While I worked on the spa company, Emma would frequently visit me in my home office to complete her schoolwork. Though there was one ominous cloud in an otherwise bright sky, it seemed like the family I had always desired. Karen, David's ex-wife. She expressed her disapproval of me right away when we first met. When she arrived to pick up Emma, she would only communicate with Emma or David, never ever speaking to me directly. Your mom looks quite serious. One day, following a particularly chilly conversation, I stated to Emma. Emma gave a shrug. She is only defensive. To show her father, she maintains a record of every penny she spends on me. She makes a larger monthly contribution to my supplies. Spreadsheets are in her possession. Although I thought this money preoccupation was odd, I kept my thoughts to myself. I didn't want to create any tension because, after all, Emma's mother was still Karen. The earliest warning indications were mild. When we were shopping, I saw Emma paying more attention to the price tags. She would comment on how much I spent on her compared to how much I spent on myself. I initially dismissed it as normal adolescent conduct, but it soon became more regular and more blatant. I once saw her looking at the labels on my clothes while she went through my wardrobe. "What are you doing, Emma?" She looked remorseful as she leaped. "Looking only. It's a pretty dress." "What was the price?" I remarked softly. "That's not exactly the right question to ask. Are you bothered by something?" She hurried away without responding. I tried talking to David about it later. As we prepared for bed, I said, "Honey, I'm concerned about Emma's obsession with money." David dismissed it with a wave. "She is a teenager. Everybody has stages. It feels different now. She seems to be keeping score." With a kiss on my forehead, he murmured, "You're overanalyzing it." Everything wasn't fine, but it's all right now. My senior year was when everything reached a breaking point. She strewn college pamphlets on our dining room table one evening. "Look at these programs," she said with enthusiasm. "This one is in California, while this one is in New York." I perused the pamphlets, all elite private universities with exorbitant tuition costs. "Have you thought of any less expensive options?" Emma's face quickly altered when I questioned her gently. "Why should I? You're wealthy. These schools are within your means." David only nodded as I glanced to him for encouragement. "She will undoubtedly assist Emma with her schooling." "Yes, honey?" I was astounded by the assumption in their tones. "We must consider every possibility," I spoke aggressively, "not only the priciest ones. Emma's academic aptitude and our financial constraints must be taken into account." Emma's response was furious. The brochures flew from the table as she brushed them away. "You're simply being avaricious. Despite having a lot of money, you refuse to assist me. Calm down, Emma." I made an effort to reason with her. It's not like money grows on trees. I earned all I have via hard effort. I'm heading to my mother's. She ran upstairs and shouted. After a few minutes, she descended with her packed luggage and hurried to a cab that was waiting. When she was gone, David betrayed me. "You treated her too harshly. She is only an adolescent with aspirations." I emphasized that dreams must be practical. "And when did it start assuming that I would cover all of the costs?" That night, I slept by myself, wondering how things had gone so wrong, while he went to bed furious. Emma remained at her mother's place for several days. All of my calls ended up in voicemail. I heard David's voice especially low and somber one evening as I was passing his home office. Something about his tone caused me to pause, even though I'm not one to listen in on conversations. "You must force her to cover my college expenses, Daddy." Emma's voice, which was audible over the speaker, put pressure on her. "She's got the cash. Mom claims that she is only being frugal." I thought my husband David, who had vowed to start a life with me, would correct his daughter instead. I got shivers from his reaction. I'll do my best, my love. Do not be concerned. Jenna will be won over. I know just how to deal with this. The way he spoke about controlling me and the easy assurance in his voice. I became physically unwell as a result. I was unable to remain silent any longer. What precisely should be handled? As I entered the doorway, I inquired. David almost dropped his phone. So, this is your strategy? Conspire behind my back with Emma to coerce me into covering all of the costs. His first astonishment soon gave way to defensiveness. How come you shouldn't? You're rich. You're not a parent yourself. If you so desired, you might be Emma's biological mother. Instead, you're using your money selfishly. I felt his words as if they were actual blows. Being selfish, I didn't want to be coerced and bullied into expecting my spouse to talk to me about important financial issues rather than scheming behind my back. We continued to debate for an additional hour, circling David and failing to recognize any wrongdoing on his part. I finally marched out of his office, my eyes flaming with rage. I declared that I would be spending the night in the guest room. Right now, I can't even look at you. That night, I hardly slept at all. Thoughts of deception and treachery were running through my head. David hardly spoke to me when he left early for work the next morning. When I heard the front door open, I was sitting in my home office, trying desperately to concentrate on my job, but failing horribly. Emma had returned. She was preparing a sandwich for herself in the kitchen when I discovered her. Like nothing had occurred. As I faced her, my hands were trembling. Last night, I heard you talking to your father, I said, maintaining a calm tone of voice in spite of my internal turmoil. Could you tell me why you're attempting to coerce your father into putting pressure on me? I was startled by the calculating expression in her eyes when she turned to face me. I thought I knew Dawn, the nice teen. It's not you, she answered icily. I can't be forced to give you explanations. I'm not your mother, sorry. Trying not to lose my cool, I nodded. However, this is my home, and I am your father's wife. Emma, I deserve basic respect. The next thing she uttered chilled my blood. All right, let's discuss respect, she murmured, folding her arms and putting down her sandwich. I'll give you the respect you deserve and call you Mum. If you cover my tuition and provide me with a monthly stipend of $2,000. That is reasonable, isn't it? The girl in front of me was barely recognizable when I gazed at her. The deception was so deliberate and so obvious, it left me speechless. I let out a chuckle. A bitter, acerbic tone. Are you genuinely attempting to sell me your love? I'm being realistic, she said. Her face was firm. You're wealthy. I'm in need of cash. Do you wish to have a daughter? I need a mother who can adequately support me. It's win-win. Emma, I'm not buying your love. I tried to remain cool, but my voice broke as I spoke. Anger twisted at her face. You're merely an elderly woman without children who will pass away by herself. Mom was correct about you. You are nothing more than a miser who keeps her money for herself rather than for her family. Everything became painfully evident at that instant. Emma had become a manipulative, money-obsessed version of herself as a result of Karen's influence poisoning her psyche. My veins felt like ice as I realized this. My stepdaughter wasn't the only person I had lost. In the first place, I had never truly had her. I was waiting in the living room that night when David got home. My knuckles were white from tension as my hands were clasped tightly in my lap. I had alternated between feeling numb and crying all afternoon, but now I was prepared to face him. We must discuss what transpired with Emma today. As he entered, still untying his tie, I said. His face stiffened instantly. Now, what had she done? My gut nodded at the guarded tone in his voice, instantly siding with Emma before even knowing what had transpired. I told Emma about the conversation. She had insulted me cruelly in an attempt to basically sell her love. I was more shocked by his response than by his daughter's actions. Exasperated, he raked his hands through his hair and blew up. I'm so sick of hearing your daily gripes about Emma. It's a novel idea. She's going through a challenging period. She needs encouragement, not unrelenting criticism. I got to my feet, shaky. Assistance? She attempted to coerce me into giving her money. She really attached a cost to calling me Mum. $2,000 every month, which includes tuition for college. How are you unable to realize how incorrect that is? You can easily afford the money. His voice rose in response. Emma is only attempting to safeguard her future. You would want to assist if you truly liked us. I felt like I was physically struck by their words. After everything I had done and everything I had tried to be for them, if I truly loved them. Abruptly, I collapsed back onto the couch, tired. David occupied the guest room as I slept through another restless night, this time in my bedroom. As I was lying in the dark, I considered all the moments that had brought this about. I had disregarded every warning sign and let every manipulation. At supper the next evening, I had already decided by morning. I waited until Emma and David had taken their seats. They were smiling and chatting as though nothing had happened, as though none of them had attempted to harm or influence me. I was sickened by how easily they could transition between brutality and normality. I cleared my throat. In regards to college, I have made a decision. I shuddered as Emma and David exchanged victorious glances. They believed they had triumphed. Emma, I'm not going to pay for your college tuition. I made it plain that I didn't want the more costly or less expensive alternatives. Furthermore, I'm not paying you $2,000 a month to act as though you love me. I'm actually not giving you any money at all. The yelling began at once. Emma started crying uncontrollably, letting large, dramatic tears fall down her cheeks. David's chair scraped the floor as he leaped to his feet. Right now, you'll have second thoughts. He loomed over me and demanded, or it's all over between us. A peculiar serenity descended upon me. It was this, the point at when all pretense vanished. I raised my gaze to him and met his irate glance with calm eyes. Thank you for saying that first. Silently, I said. Regarding divorce paperwork, I've already given my lawyer a call. David's face was devoid of color. He took a stumbling step back. I was kidding. Divorce is not what I desire. Let's speak about this, Jenna, honey. I do desire a divorce, though, I interrupted him. Additionally, you won't receive anything from me because of our prenuptial agreement. Tomorrow, I want you both to leave my house. This is not possible. Emma's phony tears became to genuine ones as she screamed. Tell her she can't do this, Daddy. I discreetly slid my chair back and stood up. I am, and I can. I advise you both to begin packing. For the first time in months, I heard David's irate yells interspersed with Miss S. frantic sobbing as I made my way upstairs. I was completely unaffected by the sound. Actually, every stride I went away from them made me feel lighter. The following morning was gloomy and chilly. I slept very little and listened to David and Emma packing and moving around the home for the whole of the night. I heard David depart for work at around daybreak, perhaps to begin looking for a new place to reside. My bedroom door was gently knocked on a few hours later. When Emma's voice finally got through, it sounded so beautiful and apologetic that it instantly sent up alarms in my mind. Before responding, I hit the record button on my phone. Please let's chat, Jenna. She was standing in her pink pajamas, appearing fragile and youthful as I answered the door. She was wringing her hands anxiously and her eyes were crimson with tears. I almost fell for it for a second. As Mother used to do when we first became family, she perched on the side of my bed and whispered, I need to tell you something. Mom came up with it all. Everything. She advised me to demand the funds and costs associated with attending college. If I pressed hard enough, you'd give in, she added. That's what wealthy people always do. I was both fascinated and disgusted by her act. She was competent. The way she looked up at me through her eyelids, the shaky lip, the occasional tear. How many times previously had I been duped by this act? Mom said. She gave a whiff. She said that you would do everything to keep us, and that you were most likely lonely and in need of a family. But I feel awful about what I did, and I've been thinking about it all night. She made a move for my hand. I withdrew. I considered it. With an eager edge in her voice, she went on. I also have a fresh idea. I will no longer speak to my mother. I cut her out of my life completely. Whether you'll still cover the cost of college. Is there a college? Not only the costly ones. And instead of $2,000 a month, perhaps just $1,000? That makes sense, doesn't it? She added hurriedly. I really mean at this time I'll be the perfect daughter, which must have conveyed the hatred I felt. I'll assist you with your business. I'll be spending the holidays with you rather than my mother. Everything. In order to physically separate us, I got up to leave the meeting. So you're prepared to forsake your mother in exchange for a lesser price? Emma, can you even hear yourself? In actuality, you're attempting to sell your bond with your own mother. However, I interrupted her. No buts are present. Emma, leave my house. You must depart now with your father. You can't remain here, regardless of where you go. She slammed doors as she passed, running away in sobs. In the afternoon, neither of them said farewell, and they were gone. I discovered little indications of their hurried departure as I strolled about the deserted house. A sock under the bed that was neglected, a half-empty shampoo bottle in the shower. The floor of the dining room still has Emma's college brochure all over it. My phone rang a couple of days later. Karen's phone number? Something forced me to answer when I nearly didn't. Karma's worked, she said, her voice brimming with contentment. It's the end of your marriage. You'll pass away by yourself. Just what I stated. I was aware that you weren't suitable for them, I added pleasantly. I have a surprise for you, Karen. After waiting for her to finish her boasting, I emailed her the audio recording of Emma threatening to sever her relationship in exchange for cash. Her voice was harsh with worry when she called back right away. It's not real. It was modified by you. Emma would never. She would. She also did. I interrupted her. Karen, you brought her up this way. She learned to view relationships as transactions from you, to quantify love in monetary terms. You have to deal with the consequences of your parenting now. I wish you pride. Before she could answer, I hung up, blocked her number, and, for the first time in days, poured myself a glass of wine. I grinned. The smile wasn't precisely joyful, but it was genuine. I had freedom. The prenuptial agreement facilitated a speedy divorce. David made no objections. He was unable to. According to mutual acquaintances, Karen and Emma had a major argument after listening to the audio, and she refused to offer any assistance with college. I feel at rest now that I'm sitting in my peaceful home. I've come to like the emptiness I once feared. I have flourishing spores. I've begun to travel more and have rediscovered my true self prior to attempting to fit myself into a prefabricated family. Sarah apologized over the phone for putting me in touch with David. Don't, I informed her. This encounter taught me some important things. What appears flawless on paper can occasionally be everything but in practice. Sarah was silent for a while. What have you heard about them? No, I said candidly, and I don't want to. I've closed that chapter of my life. In retrospect, I can see all the warning signs that I ignored, such Karen's obsession with money. David's slow change from an apparently kind adolescent to a cunning young lady, Emma, and how he never fully confronted his ex-wife or kid. However, I have no regrets about the experience. I learned from it that loneliness is not the same as being alone. My company is still growing. In addition to opening tennis ball stores in nearby cities, I'm looking at franchise prospects. I have a lot of work to do. I adore having people who truly care about me and allowing me to make my own decisions free from financial or emotional coercion. I often think about Emma when working late at one of my spas or while out to dinner with friends, and I hope that she ultimately realizes that respect and love are not something that can be purchased. However, such thoughts are dwindling. I've moved on and am now concentrating on my own achievement and pleasure. Now, when I go around my peaceful home, I no longer experience the same sense of emptiness. Rather, I am thankful for the life I have created and the knowledge to safeguard it. Sometimes the life you truly need isn't the family you believe you desire. I'm stronger because I had to learn that lesson the hard way. Story 4. Because I married before my ideal sister, my parents did not attend my wedding. After 4 years together, their idyllic family image is now coming apart. With the exception of my parents and my sister Marlene, who is 35, I, at the age of 32, was married 8 months ago. Everyone attended the wedding. My sister and I have never really gotten along, so I wasn't too surprised by her absence, but my parents' choice to forego the event was shocking, but I should have expected that given our history. I'll tell you a little about the dynamics of our family. I can't hold my parents entirely responsible for my sister's lifelong preference for her over me. She has excelled in practically everything. From the moment she could walk, She was the life of the party in every place she entered. In primary school, she took first place in every spelling bee, science fair, and talent show. In high school, the roles of prom queen, valedictorian, and class president were essentially the same. Before focusing on her business degree in college, she explored modeling since she was tall, slim, and sufficiently pretty. I vividly remember when she landed her first modeling job in her sophomore year to rejoice. My parents threw a spectacular celebration for her friends and all of our family members. We still have a framed copy of her first professional headshot hanging in our living room. Just over the hearth, I graduated with a degree in computer science the same year. They just said, "Well done," and went on to planning Marlene's upcoming picture session. After graduating, she got a position at a well-known corporation and quickly rose the corporate ladder. At 30, she already has a company vehicle and a corner office, making her a senior executive. Meanwhile, I am a mid-level software engineer at a reputable computer business. Even if I enjoy my job and it's a respectable one, it's not the kind of occupation that makes parents brag in front of their family. I'm also shorter and larger than my sister. My mother made offensive comments about how I looked. When I was growing up, you constantly placed me on diets and signed me up for exercise programs that I didn't want to go to. "Marlene never struggles with her weight," she would say. Or, with a little more work, "You could look as good as your sister." By high school, I had learned to disregard these comments, but they still had an effect. I've come to terms with these differences over the years. At some point, I realized that my parents never enjoyed my achievements as much as they enjoyed Marlene's. What might I do? I spent years taking seminars and joining groups in an attempt to get their favor. For a little while, they even tried modeling and encouraged it. My sister never lets me forget this failure, but nothing was ever adequate. They were very captivated by my sister's accomplishments, and I was only the second daughter. In my mid-20s, I stopped trying to impress them. I focused on building relationships with people that appreciated me for who I am, living my own life, and developing professionally on my own terms. Knowing that my parents were always worried about keeping up appearances has, to be honest, made things better since then. In order to avoid confrontation during our required Christmas dinners and other family gatherings, I maintained a superficial relationship with them. They had Marlene to drool over, so I wouldn't smile when they gushed over her next romantic partner or vacation destination. My emotional detachment seemed to go unnoticed by them. Then, through a common friend, I met my spouse at a computer conference. Unlike my family, he saw me, really saw me. He appreciated my ability to code, my sarcastic sense of humor, and yes, even my physical type. He never once suggested that I should alter or compare myself to others from the start. After 4 years of dating, while we were alone at home having takeout with our favorite TV playing in the background, he proposed to me. It was perfect. I informed my parents I got engaged last year, of course. Their answer ought to have been my first hint. There was silence, no congratulation. After asking whether I was sure I wanted to dive straight in, my mother suggested that I might want to be in better physical shape before the wedding. My father spoke very little. My husband saw their strange response during the engagement party, which I was too nervous to completely understand at the moment. They spent much of the evening in a corner, huddled over my mother's phone. Then my husband told me he had overheard them on the phone with Marlene, who was obviously weeping. They were discussing how they never anticipated Rebecca getting married first, and that this wasn't the original plan. Despite not even being engaged at the time, he heard in passing that there were a few little delays throughout the wedding preparation process. My mother was not interested in helping me choose a dress or venue because she had already created many wedding Pinterest boards for Marlene. All my mother said was that it was useful and fit my body. I felt beautiful when I picked out my outfit, a simple yet gorgeous A-line gown. I ended up doing most of the preparations with my future mother-in-law, who treated me like the daughter she never had. Together with my spouse, I went over and double-checked the guest list. Both traditional and internet wedding invitations were sent out to ensure that no one was left out. The email invites came with red receipts, so I know my parents got theirs. I discovered they hadn't RSVP'd, so I called, texted, and emailed them many times. When I asked my boys if they were busy and needed to check their schedules, they either ignored me or gave me misleading answers. I was too busy getting ready for the wedding to expend too much energy worrying about it. My in laws were really helpful, helping with everything from floral arrangements to seating charts. Not even during my husband's sister's beautiful bridal shower was the painfully evident absence of my own family mentioned. The wedding day itself was lovely, despite the absence of my parents. Following the morning ceremony, we had a relaxed afternoon reception in a garden. We looked so happy and in love, and everyone was correct. However, there were moments when their absence seemed like physical pain, like when I couldn't attend the father-daughter dance or saw the front row seats vacant. After the wedding and honeymoon, I looked for solutions. When I finally called them, they told me they had never received a formal invitation and that they were quite sad. Mom went on a long diatribe about how irresponsible I was, how she had always wanted to help plan her daughter's weddings, and how she couldn't understand why I would exclude them from such an important event. This confused me because I was certain that we had invited them in both ways throughout the conversation. I checked our records and confirmed that we had mailed them. The delivery of the actual invitations was also verified. They tried to gaslight me, but I didn't challenge them. I just apologized for the mistake and hung up. My husband later mentioned other instances that showed their actual motivations, such how they seemed shocked rather than happy when we informed them we were engaged, or how they kept finding excuses not to help with the wedding preparations, as he didn't want to make my wedding plans any more stressful. He hadn't mentioned these discoveries before. In hindsight, however, the pattern seemed obvious. They couldn't stand the thought of me, the less successful daughter, being married before their beloved Malene. In their view, I would never be able to compete with my sister, and their behavior just confirmed what I had always known. Finding out that even my wedding day, which should have been a celebration of love and new beginnings, became yet another front in their never-ending battle to maintain their perfect family image, with Marlene at its center, was the most disheartening thing. After a year of dating, Marlene just became engaged to her partner. I talked to family members in family group discussions that I don't take part in, they said. My parents publicly declared how thrilled they were to plan a lavish wedding for her. My mother is bringing Marlene to secret fittings at high-end boutiques, and they are already bragging about landing fancy venues and dresses. I was not permitted to spend any mother-daughter time. The fact that so many members of our family are now declining to attend Marlene's wedding is interesting. An engagement celebration. It seems that my relatives started talking about my parents' behavior at my wedding. When my relatives ask why my parents didn't come to my wedding, I just respond with what I believe to be true. When I got married before their cherished daughter, they couldn't stand it. I don't try to be sympathetic or exaggerate the facts, I just tell them the way I see them. A few days ago, I received a message from my parents accusing me of deliberately trying to ruin Marlene's wedding. The relatives they have spoken to are allegedly making excuses not to attend any of the events connected to her wedding. After hearing about my parents' treatment of me, my cousin, to whom my sister vented, told her that people are hesitant to visit. My folks say I'm spreading lies because I'm jealous of my sister's upcoming extravagant wedding. I'm just giving them the truth about what happened, which is the issue. Instead of holding me responsible for the outcomes, they might want to think about their own behavior. If the reality portrays them as awful, as things keep changing, maintaining the illusion of a connection with my parents is becoming more and more difficult for me. I eventually realized that no matter what I accomplished, I would never be enough for them because of the way they behaved at my wedding. The worst part of my wedding is no longer their absence. It's accepting that I never had the supportive, loving parents I had always hoped for. Right now, I'm focusing on building a life with someone who truly values me for who I am. However, if anything significant changes, I'll keep you informed. First update, a lot has happened since my last post, which was 2 weeks ago. In the end, I decided to have a face-to-face conversation with my parents over their behavior at my wedding and their ongoing accusations that I spoiled my sister's special day. After reading your words of encouragement, I thought it was time to lay everything out. When I started receiving texts from them about their troubled family background, during our phone conversation, my parents immediately began accusing me of being envious of Marlene and orchestrating the whole affair. I took an action that I had never taken before. They expected me to agree with them, but I didn't. I told them, "You're right," instead of defending myself like I typically would. "I'm jealous. Not Marlene's accomplishments, not her job, nor her looks. You never even tried to show me the same kind of love and support that you've given her, and I'm jealous of that." The line was interrupted. Then my mother started saying that they had always treated us equally and that I was making this up. At that moment, something inside of me broke. Emotions that had been suppressed for years suddenly surfaced. Every birthday, when Marlene's latest achievement overshadowed my own, I told them. Because Marlene's prom dress cost more than my entire year's worth of college textbooks, my mother canceled my high school graduation luncheon when she received a modeling callback. My father tried to interrupt me by saying I was exaggerating, but I persisted. I described how it was to see them. Spend years planning a fake wedding for my sister while ignoring my own. I explained how it hurt to see my parents' chairs empty and how my mother-in-law had to assist me with everything, from planning the wedding to shopping for clothes. Their response was instructive. Instead of embracing any of my arguments, they turned the tables on me. "If you felt this way, why didn't you say anything?" As though I hadn't made an effort to communicate with them for years. My mom was adamant. My father continued by saying that I was being unfair and vindictive by talking about these feelings with our family members. At that moment, my mother said something that finally made everything clear. "We never thought you would be so spiteful as to attempt to spoil Marlene's wedding," she said. "But we always knew you were insecure about her success. We didn't raise you like this." They couldn't even hear me, I realized. They thought my feelings and their actions had nothing to do with the whole situation. It's related to Marlene's response. They cared less about the harm they had done to me and more about her upcoming wedding. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to improve the situation, not even during this conversation about their absence from my wedding. I didn't apologize or take anything back. Instead, I told them what was on my mind. On one point, you're right, you reared me. You taught me that I would never be good enough, that Marlene's achievements would always be greater than mine. That maintaining your perfect family image was more important than how I felt. You didn't want to teach me this, but you also taught me that I deserved better than this. There was a lengthy silence before my father spoke. His tone was calm and composed as he talked. "Perhaps we should quit pretending to be awful parents. We thought you would help us resolve this since you have already decided that we are, and you clearly like watching us suffer because you are family. However, you have obviously chosen your own choices. My mother dealt the final blow. Maybe you just couldn't handle not being the focus of attention. Notwithstanding our constant efforts to treat you both equally, it's not our fault, Rebecca. Playing the victim was your choice. I didn't try to argue. Why would it be important? They had just confirmed what I had been saying. They couldn't acknowledge that they had anything to do with it. I just hung up and said goodbye. Even throughout this final conversation, after the call, I was pleasantly surprised to feel comforted. Yes, there were tears, but they weren't the sloppy, tragic ones I recall from my childhood. They were tears of liberation. For the first time, I had said what I needed to say without repressing my emotions or feeling bad about them. My spouse later noticed me sitting on our back patio, watching the sunset. Without a word, he took my hand and sat next to me. "They won't ever change, will they?" After some time, I asked him. "No, but you have." Squeezing my hand, he said, "And that's what matters." He's right. I've evolved. She is no longer the little child who desperately sought her parents' approval. The lady who emerged from that final conversation doesn't require their validation anymore. Holding out hope that my parents would change for the first time is more difficult than accepting that they will never be the people I need them to be. I don't give a damn about the family turmoil or the outcome of my sister's wedding. They now have to handle whatever comes up after I have my say. The strangest thing is that I feel like a weight I've been carrying all my life has finally been removed. Maybe I needed the capacity to stop aiming for love that should have come naturally, even though it's not the happy ending I had hoped for with my parents. Second update. After my encounter with our parents 3 days ago, things have taken an unexpected turn. Marlene decided to become involved in the drama, but her plan was a complete failure. Yesterday morning, I received a well-written note from my sister. It was clear from her text that she had become patronizing over the years. You were very improper in what you said to your parents. They have given us everything and supported us through every phase of our life. You can't just blame them for being bad parents because you're self-conscious about your own life choices. She proceeded with her usual mix of subtle digs and moral superiority. Although I can appreciate that your wedding didn't go as planned, it doesn't mean you should attempt to ruin mine. Wanting a celebration that recognizes those of us who have worked hard to achieve certain criteria is quite acceptable. Not everything has to be a competition, Rebecca. I chose not to respond. I have found that engaging with her only gives her more ammo after enduring her deceptive behavior for years. Instead, I just blocked her number. I thought that would be the end of it, because Marlene has never been one to tolerate being ignored. A few hours later, my husband contacted me at work, his laughter so loud that he was unable to talk. Marlene obtained his personal number because she couldn't seem to reach me directly. Sent him a series of texts detailing the specific reasons why our sister relationship has never been positive, most likely via an acquaintance named Viacom. She started off her first message to him in a way that was professional enough for me to feel obligated to get in touch as Rebecca, sister, and someone who genuinely cares about the welfare of our family. But it quickly evolved into her true intentions. She told my husband that since he was the new guy in Rebecca's life, he had a duty to assist me in acting in a more appropriate way. The messaging has grown more condescending. The dynamics of a family are complicated. She added that someone with Rebecca's sensitivity could not see the wider picture. My spouse is a competent software architect with an MBA. She suggested that he help me see reason before I destroy family ties forever. The real stinger, however, was her attempt to capitalize on what she thought were his social climbing instincts. She actually wrote, "Don't you realize that keeping up positive ties with prosperous family members like me might help you in the future?" Rebecca has always been able to see through Marlene's facade, so her actions are only harming her own chances and, consequently, yours. My husband found her effort at manipulation amusing. He especially appreciated her assumption that he would be impressed in some way by her business rank, or the possibility of networking possibilities. She truly doesn't know me at all, as he stated himself. When I arrived home that evening, we reviewed the texts together. Rather than being angry or insulted, I was laughing with my husband. It was freeing to see Marlene's tricks revealed, especially when they were directed at someone who was completely unaware of them. This interaction taught me something important about my sister. Despite all of her accomplishments and success, she remains that insecure teenager who has to undermine others to feel better about herself. Her lack of knowledge about healthy relationships is evident in her belief that, once her direct approach failed, she could use my husband to dominate me. The most telling part was how quickly she shifted to attempting to turn my husband against me. That's exactly what she did in high school. When she couldn't bully me directly, she tried to incite my friends against me. Same tactics, different decade. Now that I have this new perspective, I can see how Marlene's behavior throughout our early years went beyond normal sibling rivalry. She worked hard to maintain her position as the beloved kid, often complimenting me and our parents on how much superior she was. Whatever I managed to do had to be overshadowed by her. She had to tell everyone I made friends with about my flaws. I react differently to her games now. I would have started to doubt myself after reading her texts. It was 10 years ago. 5 years ago today, I would have been angry and hurt. I just find her obvious attempts at manipulation funny, and I'm tired of the drama. My husband's reaction was perfect. Instead of getting caught up in her drama, he just answered, "We appreciate your concern for Rebecca's and her husband's well-being. My goal is to make her happy, not to control her actions. I believe it would be better if you spoke with Rebecca directly about any potential issues. Enjoy your day." When Marlene didn't get the required reaction, she sent one final message. "It appears that she has also poisoned you against the family. Don't claim that I didn't make an effort to assist when everything blows up in your face." Ironically, my determination to avoid my family's toxic dynamics has been reinforced by Marlene's attempt to help. According to her text to my hubby, nothing has changed. She remains the same crafty person who feels compelled to control every narrative and who sees any deviation from her ideal family script as dangerous. Perhaps the nicest part of the whole thing is realizing how completely ineffective her attempts at persuasion were. Totally unconcerned by her anxieties of societal consequences, she was able to draw my spouse and I closer together instead of making us drift away. In the evening, we made light of her texts and made plans for a weekend getaway. I've realized that maintaining facades and telling stories isn't what actual family is all about. Supporting one another, joking together, and standing together are the key. When someone, even your own sister, tries to control you, more than ever, I'm convinced that I'd be better off avoiding the turmoil surrounding Marlene's wedding rather than being embroiled in my family's never-ending power battles. My spouse and I have decided that we should focus on making ourselves happy. It is believed that the best kind of retribution is success. However, I'm learning that dazzling others isn't the key to true success. It's about embracing your choices and surrounding yourself with people that support rather than obstruct your personal growth. By that measure, I feel more accomplished than ever. The third update. Things have changed unexpectedly after my sister's failed effort to manipulate my husband 2 weeks ago. Despite my parents' frantic efforts to restore their image, things are becoming worse. Through family connections, I learned that my parents had been frantically trying to change the story. Because I'm jealous of Marlene's perfect wedding, they have started calling each family individually and accusing me of spreading false information. They say I'm only bitter because her wedding will be far more elegant and beautiful than mine was. In their latest story, I deliberately excluded them from my wedding so I could play the victim. It's amusing that they still use the same email addresses since the beginning of email and live in the same house they've had for 30 years. However, they claim that I delivered their invitation to an outdated physical location and email address. The good news is that they are utterly failing in their attempts to restrict the harm. Our relatives don't think it's true. In fact, several relatives have related firsthand stories of my parents' history of favoritism. An aunt told me that my mother had done similar things at family weddings before to make sure Marlene was the light of the party. The most satisfying development is how my extended family has responded to my parents' deception. Marlene's wedding has lost the backing of important family members, some of whom were supposed to play important roles in the occasion. The privileged area they were able to gain access to through familial ties could no longer be available to them. During a family gathering last weekend, schedule issues suddenly arose even for a family friend's premium clothing business. There was a tipping point. My mother apparently got irritated when someone foolishly asked about my wedding photos. Due to envy, she launched into a defensive diatribe, accusing me of trying to ruin the family and claiming that I had changed since being married. Her outburst didn't work. Beautiful. Numerous family members who were ignorant of the situation further damaged their already damaged reputation. It's particularly ironic that my parents' desperate attempts to uphold their perfect family facade are the cause of its disintegration. Every time they try to explain why they couldn't attend my wedding, in the end, they reveal more about their true selves. The more they try to paint me as the villain, the more people realize how dishonest they are. After being neutral at first, family members are suddenly taking sides. Even my father's brother, who had always been quiet to keep the peace, recently expressed regret for not speaking up sooner about their treatment of me. He has decided not to bring his family to any of Marlene's wedding-related events. I haven't since I don't have to respond to any of this directly. Taking care of everything for me is the truth. When Marlene and my parents try to spin the story, they invariably end up exposing more of their harmful behavior. It turns out that all those years of keeping quiet and enduring their treatment in an attempt to maintain harmony was actually simply a means of condoning their behavior. My spouse used the greatest language when he expressed it. Over many years, they created a facade of the perfect family, but it was founded on partiality and emotional manipulation. It was going to collapse eventually. Personally, I'm doing better than ever. I don't have to stress over trying to please my parents anymore. The strain of managing Marlene's feelings has lessened. For the first time in my life, I'm not worried about maintaining their ideal family image, rather of taking action. Sometimes the finest form of vengeance is to just let the truth speak for itself. I'm thankful that Reddit gave me the confidence to stand up for myself. How much your advice and support have meant to me along this journey is beyond your comprehension. Sometimes you need to see strangers you met online to realize what real family support looks like. I appreciate you watching. Please click the notification bell if you haven't already in order to receive updates on additional startling real-life stories that are happening in your area. Story 5. My mother remarked nonchalantly, "We need $15,000 by Friday. All you are is a family ATM." She chuckled. Thus, I ended their ideal getaway and permanently left. I never imagined myself to be the one to abandon my family. I simply wasn't that kind of person. Everyone had always relied on me because I was trustworthy, accountable, and dependable, until I discovered I could no longer rely on them. My younger brother Benjamin called me innocently about textbooks he couldn't cover, and that's when it all began. My sister Claire and I had a sad conversation about her car breaking down and my mother requesting assistance with the energy bill, but only this one. Dad's brief absence from health insurance. Minor failures, I told myself. Family members watch out for one another. My career was off to a great start. Eventually, the startup where I worked as a software developer went public. Even though I wasn't wealthy, I was stable financially while others were still having trouble. It seemed appropriate to help them. I found meaning in being needed. I was unaware that the transition was taking place. I failed to recognize how critical problems become accepted responsibilities and how this once became every month. My savings account decreased, and I became less focused on my financial goals. However, I continued to concur. What was my option? They were my relatives. The demands became more intense, more often, more lavish. Claire needed money for her new place's first and last month's rent. After totaling his vehicle, Benjamin required assistance once more. Mom want a kitchen makeover. A timeshare offer that looked like a good value thrilled Dad. I put off my personal goals, took on weekend freelance work, and put in more hours, ensuring my own future, traveling, and purchasing a home. June then arrived, the point at when everything was altered. For years, I had been preparing to travel alone to Japan. My desire for a vacation was granted. I've booked my flights and reserved my lodging. I was scheduled to go in 3 days. Mom called. There was that familiar tremor in her voice, a forewarning of a request to come. I had a problem with the IRS, as did your father. We have till Friday to get $15,000. My stomach grew constricted. That covered almost all of my trip expenses and a sizable amount of the money I had been saving for a home. What took place? I inquired, fear creeping in. Oh, she answered casually. You know your father. This year, he believed he could do the taxes alone. Made a few mistakes. Her tone seemed strange, too polished, too informal for a crisis. This is serious. Could you please forward the notification to me? I might be able to assist in arranging a payment schedule. Then a harsh sigh, followed by silence. Haley, you don't have to repair things for us. You must pay it to us. I transferred the money, canceled my vacation, and told myself that this was only a temporary situation and that I would soon get my money back. I wasn't even thanked. My sister uploaded photos to the internet a week later. Mom and Dad at a Miami luxury resort. I'm holding cocktails, shopping bags made by high-end designer labels, raving in the captions about their unexpected family vacation and the greatest parents in the world. I phoned right away. Mom didn't pay attention to it. Dad did too. Claire did too. The fourth ring was eventually heard by Benjamin, who spoke impatiently. I could hear music in the background, laughter, a gathering. What is going on? Here, we're a little busy. My throat constricted. Are all of you in Miami? Yes, he said nonchalantly. We were taken on a surprise trip by our parents, completely last minute. This site is fantastic, it's crazy. My hands were shaking. You planned this when? I'm not sure. A month ago, perhaps. Something about a tax refund coming through, Mom said. Good fortune. Refund of taxes? No tax emergency. The call appeared to cease, or so I believed. He hadn't hung up correctly, though. Rustling laughter reached my ears. My mother's voice then became quite clear. In fact, Haley was duped by that tax tale. Incredibly so. A laugh. Manipulation of her has always been simple, Mom went on. Do you recall when she paid for Benjamin's urgent dental care? Another laugh. This one from Benjamin. Yeah, he laughed. That Xbox really took care of my teeth. What does it matter as long as she continues to pay the bills? Then came Dad's voice. If you just whine a bit, she'll take out her credit card, as usual. To Haley. The only thing we are is a cash machine. The soft clink of glasses was followed by Claire's voice. My chest constricted as I sat still. Like scavengers surrounding prey, their comments replayed in my head like a family ATM. Just a little whine. Why hadn't I seen it earlier? They continued talking without realizing that I could hear them discussing their next plan, deciding on a narrative to tell, choosing how much they would ask for. Everything sounded so natural, so usual. I hung up, turned off my phone, and waited in my apartment's darkness until the first rays of daylight came in through my windows. My phone was inundated with texts when I eventually turned it back on. Nobody brought up what I had heard. Simply put, greater demands. Please. More. Higher standards. Something changed within me, solidified into an indestructible substance. I refrained from confronting them right away, kept what I had discovered a secret. Rather, I devised a strategy. Initially, a financial expert was contacted. I went over each and every dime I had contributed over the previous 5 years. In some locations, the amount made my stomach turn, enough to purchase a house, and in others, many homes. I then looked for a therapist. I started dissecting the poisonous tendencies that had brought me to this point: the manipulation, the shame, and my ingrained need for approval. But I had one last task to complete before continuing. Something to make things right. I had been exhausted by them for years, deprived me of my dreams. Time I could never get back was stolen. My postponed trip to Japan was just the latest in a long line of dreams that have been dashed. I sent the identical message to each of them. I want to give the family a special treat now that I have some extra cash. A genuine getaway to compensate for the loss of Miami. They were so excited that they answered right away. There had been no inquiry as to the source of the funds for the following 2 weeks. I meticulously planned what they thought would be the ideal family vacation, a dream vacation at a prestigious Hawaiian resort, first-class airfare, special excursions, and every conceivable luxury. I searched the internet for the most luxurious lodging options in Maui, including oceanfront villas with stunning views, private beaches, individualized spa services, and gourmet meals cooked by a top chef. I emailed them pictures of their alleged suites, pictures of horizon extending luxury pools, details about cabanas where guests may enjoy beverages and the sunset. Dad texted right away. This is what I'm referring to now. At last, my daughter is contributing to the family in a meaningful way. Breathless with joy, Mom left a voicemail. I have to go shopping, she exclaimed. I have nothing fancy enough for a resort like that, clearly expecting me to pay for her new outfit as well. Claire started using social media right away. She tweeted, adding vacation hashtags and tropical emojis when your sister finally steps up and does right by the family. Benjamin was direct in his statement. You ought to have done something for us by now, rather of using your money in such a self-centered manner. No gratitude at all, not even a shred of gratitude, only a guess, entitlement. As though they had every right to this lavish vacation. I urged them to bring their best clothes for an unforgettable trip and emailed them confirmation details and detailed schedules. I cultivated the expectation for weeks. I gave them something fresh to look forward to each day. A slick brochure for the exclusive tour to Helicopter Island. For whale viewing dinner reservations at restaurants with unachievable wait lists, I had saved information on a hired vessel. As they excitedly pondered what to bring, excited texts began to pour in. As they counted down the days on social media, they happily told their friends and neighbors about the lavish vacation they were planning. To make their trip even more memorable, they had upscale baggage monogrammed with their initials brought straight to their home. Everything had been set up with their comfort in mind. The message that went with it said, the reaction was instantaneous. So happy, so proud, and so resolute that this was exactly the sort of gesture they had always expected. It was all set up the night before they left. They packed their things neatly. There was a buzz of excitement in the air, and anticipation was at its height. They had bought new holiday clothes, Their internet profiles had already been changed with images with a tropical theme, and an expensive camera had been bought to record every unique occasion. The last message was then conveyed. All reservations have been canceled. The flights, the planned activities, the opulent lodging, the feeling of painstakingly preparing for something significant just to have it abruptly snatched away because someone else believed their wants were more important was reflected in this sudden cancellation. The ideal analogy was the lengthy planned trip to Japan, which had been foregone in the name of an urgent financial problem. The final judgment was this: unquestionable proof was included to the email. The exchange that had revealed all. Black and white footage captured them giggling, cunning manipulation, and careless plotting of future plots. The tape exposed the ease with which they had taken advantage of kindness. A flurry of incoming calls and messages started almost immediately. Their entitlement remained unchallenged, their wrath was tangible, and their disbelief was apparent. The conduct was accused of being callous, self-centered, and needlessly brutal. Confusion mingled with outrage as they tried to make sense of what had happened. There was no responsibility, no apology. They were only outraged that they had been denied something they had taken for granted. Countless voicemails and missed calls had piled up by daylight, alternating between fervent entreaties and boiling fury. One email, however, stood out from the others. It was a straightforward, businesslike, and emotionless ultimatum. Unless the matter was resolved right away, complete. This legacy would ensure that not a single cent would be collected by passing on to others every asset, including the family house, treasures, and collectibles. This was presented as the last chance to make up for the alleged transgression and keep one's position in the family. However, this final effort at leverage was ineffective. They quickly created a legal instrument that formally gave up any claim to their estate. The whole sum that had been given over the previous 5 years was tallied in a thorough financial analysis. In other places, the amount was so astounding that it could be used to purchase many residences. Almost immediately, a response came in, warning of what was being irrevocably sacrificed and frantic assurances that this was an impetuous choice. However, the response was given without hesitation. A cycle of financial exploitation was being broken. Self-worth, freedom, and mental tranquility were being safeguarded. Priceless items that cannot be replaced by inheritance. A different tactic was used by my mother, who insisted that I was ruining a lineage that had endured for centuries in a tearful letter full of passionate pleas about family custom. She forewarned me that I would later come to regret severing my deserved heritage. I decided not to respond. There was nothing left to talk about. Claire and Benjamin worked together. Alternating between insults and threats, they promised to refute any allegation I made in the future. As if their rejection was meant to be a punishment rather than a release, they vowed to spread false information about me and vowed that no one in our extended family would ever again acknowledge my existence. I changed my locks, asked my apartment building to bolster security, blocked them completely after their last communication, and prepared for whatever would happen next. I didn't anticipate how quickly they would get out of hand. My mother showed up to my place of employment the next day, creating a scene in the reception area. As she yelled about ungrateful children and that she wished she had never given birth to me, security had to pull her away. My bank issued a fraud notice after my father tried to access my bank accounts by feigning a family emergency. When that failed, he got in touch with my company and made unfounded claims about my mental health and my capacity to do my duties. Claire launched a full-scale social media assault, writing a lengthy and harsh post about egotistical siblings and alleged mental health problems. She uploaded sentimental family photos, tagged friends we had in common, and manipulated the narrative to portray me as a heartless and icy person. The most hostile was Benjamin. In the middle of the night, he showed up outside my apartment drunk, banging on my door and yelling threats that he would teach me a lesson in family loyalty. After I called the police, they escorted him out. I had applied for a restraining order by the following morning. The mayhem continued for weeks, then for months. Using therapy and the boundaries I was learning to establish, I bore it in silence. The majority of the extended family took sides with my parents, who had dominated the story for many years. The ones who were particularly good at portraying the injured, destitute victims. I lost relationships with aunts and uncles I used to know. I was removed from the digital lives of cousins with whom I had shared childhood memories. The truth was only revealed to my grandmother. From her retirement home, she called me. Her tone was firm but weak. She acknowledged that she had seen them treat me badly for years. How they drained me. How they demanded endlessly. She regretted not stepping in sooner, not standing up for me when I needed it most. Her words became a lifeline, a beacon of support when I felt most alone. Half a year after the Hawaii fiasco, their efforts to reach me gradually faded. A full year later, they stopped completely. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that they had simply redirected their tactics toward new victims, other relatives, old family, friends, anyone who might fall for their never-ending tales of financial hardship. Occasionally, my father's thread about the inheritance resurfaced in my thoughts. I'd been raised to believe it was my rightful future, a safety net, the culmination of generations of work. Walking away from it had not been an easy decision, but whenever doubt crept in, I reminded myself of what accepting that money would truly cost. Relentless manipulation, continued emotional blackmail, and a lifetime of servitude masked as family duty. No financial sum was worth that sacrifice. 2 years after cutting all ties, an official document arrived. Certified legal notice confirming what my father had promised. I had been permanently removed from their will. The family house, the assets and the heirlooms were all designated solely for Benjamin and Claire. I anticipated feeling something, perhaps loss, regret, or second thoughts, but instead I only experienced relief. The last connection had been severed. The final piece of control they held over me was now gone. I marked this moment by celebrating opening a special bottle of champagne that I had been saving for just such an occasion. I toasted to my newfound freedom 2 years after the incident in Miami. I finally made my way to Japan. The 2 weeks I spent there were far more restorative than I had expected. It was a place where no one knew me, where there were no expectations, where I could simply exist without justifying my presence. I could finally be myself. When I returned home, I began the journey of rebuilding my life step by step. I purchased a home not extravagant, but it was mine. Each nail I hammered, every brushstroke I painted, felt like an act of taking back control. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a scrappy mutt who, like me, had been abandoned by those who should have cared for him. Together, Molly and I healed, learning to trust again, to live in the present and to enjoy life once more. 3 years after cutting ties with my family, I received a letter from a cousin I hadn't heard from in years. She tracked me down, eager to reconnect. "I've left them too," she wrote. "It took me longer to see what you saw, but I finally came to the same conclusion." We met for coffee, sharing stories so alike. It was almost uncanny. The manipulation, the constant talking disguised as affection. "You inspired me," she said. "When you walked away, I thought if you could do it, maybe I could too." That night, I made a new entry in my special notebook, the one where I kept track of my life. After distancing myself from my family, under unexpected gifts, I wrote "Help someone else break free." 5 years after the incident in Hawaii, I got another email from my father. The subject line, "The Will." Despite myself, my heart skipped. I hesitated before opening it, wondering what fresh plan it may be. The message was basic. "Your grandfather's estate has been completed. Despite your treachery, there's a separate trust he put up years ago, particularly for you. Even I can't access it. The attorneys require your contact details to send you. What's yours? Reply with your address." I talked with my lawyer before answering, assuring that it wasn't another trap to bring me back into their hands. The trust was legitimate. It was a large sum my grandpa had set aside for me, irrespective of my parents' will. My father was correct. He couldn't touch it, couldn't stop me from claiming it, couldn't use it against me. I provided my data to the estate's solicitors and got the inheritance with mixed feelings. I was appreciative to my grandfather, who possibly had observed the family dynamics for what they actually were, many years before I did. Nevertheless, I was saddened by his passing and experienced a complicated uneasiness about embracing anything associated with my family. Ultimately, I gave half of the bequest to charities that aid others who have experienced emotional abuse. The remainder was deposited into a future oriented fund to create a life that was genuinely mine, to save for retirement, and to complete the house I was remodeling. My father's email was the last time I spoke to any of them. Through shared acquaintances, I have heard tidbits of information. Mom continues to gripe about money even while she indulges in upscale things. Dad still acts as though his financial situation is better than it actually is. Without my support, Benjamin and Claire continue to switch professions and make excuses for why their relationship never works out. They have had to lower their expectations, cut back, and face a reality they were oblivious to while I was their safety net. I often wonder how their lives may have changed if I had established limits sooner. If I hadn't allowed their actions to continue for so long, if I had forced them to confront their financial situation before it got ingrained in them. But ultimately, I'm not accountable for it. It wasn't. Throughout this journey, they will never fully understand what went wrong, which is the toughest fact to swallow. Never acknowledge the damage they did to me or justify the suffering they imposed. I continue to be the antagonist in their narrative of events, the self-centered daughter who left her family and disconnected them when they most needed her, the one who wouldn't give them what they thought was theirs. I used to dream about the ideal conclusion. A genuine apology and a bittersweet reunion. The family is apologizing and acknowledging their errors. However, I've given up on that dream. Waiting for closure that could never be provided by those who were unable to provide it was another instance of self-harm. My internal acceptance and realization that their actions were never really about me allowed me to find closure. I was just the easiest resource to reach. They refused to give me the easiest route because I earned it. Since stealing was all they knew, they took. In order to break generational cycles, you must face painful realities about yourself and the people you care about. I once questioned my therapist about why I hadn't seen the pattern sooner and why I continued to give in spite of the mounting indications that something wasn't right. According to her, you were raised to feel that your value was based on what you could provide. They indoctrinated you to put their demands ahead of your own from an early age. Deeply ingrained and evolving is that conditioning. Reverting to previous habits requires tolerance, time, and unending self-compassion. This is not made simple by the world. In our society, martyrdom is praised, self-sacrifice is exalted, and genuine love is defined as giving until nothing is left. However, it is imperative to question that narrative. When you think that your worth is found in giving yourself up for other people, ask yourself, who benefits? My family is not like other families. I am aware that certain relationships are beneficial when there is reciprocal support and when supporting one another doesn't mean losing one's identity, when love isn't exchanged. If you are lucky enough to have such a family, love it, nurture it, and appreciate its rarity and value. And know that a different life is possible if your tale is similar to mine. A life in which connections provide vitality instead of weariness, where your needs are important and love is unconditional. What I can provide to others does not determine my value. It exists without regard to function, utility, or goal. Just because I exist, I am sufficient.